Hi everyone. Um, Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm also a UNISA student and I'm doing this because it helps me to get inspired. It helps me to learn and I hope it helps you too. If you like it, you're welcome to subscribe and please click like and it'll help me and other students if you comment with questions or anything you like. It would really be lovely. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Viktor Frankl. All right. I absolutely love Viktor Frankl. He speaks to me most deeply of all the people that we've covered so far. And you'll see, because I've used a ton of videos. But I recommend going to the website and watching those videos just to get inspired. Because if you get inspired, it's easy to take in the information because it's meaningful. Otherwise, it's this dry, trying to memorize. It's like trying to eat toast without any butter. It's really dry. So this is what makes it wonderful and amazing. This is the key message of Viktor Frankl. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. So I'm going to run you through the chapter. You can just listen along and let it go into your head. That's what these are really for, especially for people whose first language isn't English. I think this can help. Okay, Viktor Frankl was an existential psychologist. He studied and worked in Vienna in the 1920s and 1930s, and he developed a theory called logotherapy, a form of therapy. He was born in 1905. He died in 1997. What is logotherapy? It is the theory that human nature is motivated by the search for a life purpose. Logotherapy is the pursuit of that meaning for one's life. Okay, here he is in the center with the bottle of champagne, being liberated from Auschwitz. Okay, you can read this book for free on archive.org. I'm still reading it. It's absolutely fantastic and it's very easy to read. I find it flows beautifully. Okay, as South Africans, we live in tough times. We deal with a lot of trauma. We deal with a lot of suffering. And I think globally, we are heading for very stormy seas, given environmental collapse. We're heading for very stormy seas. So I think Viktor Frankl is more relevant than ever. Okay, this is a beautiful 10-minute first-hand account of his experiences. He spoke when he was 88 years old, yeah. So that's quite remarkable. Okay. He trained under Sigmund Freud and under Adler. He felt Freud put too much emphasis on the will to pleasure. Like the id always just wants to be satisfied and is greedy for pleasure. And Adler was on about the will to power. So he also said, no, that doesn't work. And even as a boy, he felt that we were not automatons, not mechanisms with no free will dictated by our biology, like animals without any choice. So he felt that people were driven primarily by the will to meaning. He was influenced by the existential philosophers such as Nietzsche and others. And there's a whole interesting background to this, which I hope one day we can explore. All right. Existential psychology. This is a system in psychology focused on the belief that the essence of humans is their existence. So the process of the psychotherapeutic intervention would be seeking meaning within the whole of that person's existence, including their personal history. The underlying assumptions of logotherapy. People have freedom to choose and ultimate responsibility for their choices. We are spiritual beings. True fulfillment is about fulfilling a purpose that is beyond us and outside of ourselves. We can rise above ourselves. So it's transpersonal. We can change our environment. We can change ourselves. We want to and we need to live for a purpose greater than ourselves, such as love for someone else or to do good or for a greater cause. This is what gives life meaning and fulfillment. Conscience is what tells us what is right and what we should be doing. And conscience is really a call to the spiritual aspect of self to act meaningfully. There are intrinsically higher values and meanings. And so conscience is transcendent. Okay. But what is that transcendent truth? You can't receive it from outside. No one can tell you what it is. You need to discover it for yourself. Okay, so religion is useful in the same way that education can be useful to call you to reach outside of yourself, but it cannot tell you what you will find. Okay. For the meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day, and from hour to hour. What matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment. Okay. This is quite a nice, well, the blog is useful, a bit technical, because nowadays we've got positive psychology is very in, so this is looking at how this works together, but the graph is fantastic. So a life with meaning but failure is a sacrificial life. A life with emptiness and no meaning but failure is a wasted life. A successful life with emptiness is a shallow life. And a life with both success and meaning is an ideal life. The structure of the personality. We have three aspects: the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual. We are spiritual beings primarily, and this means we are fundamentally free. We cannot be determined by the physical or the psychological, non-deterministic. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I really like them. It's wonderful. Okay, this is a 3-minute talk about this by Dr. Frankl. So it's good to hear his voice. Please go and listen. All right. This is why it's so good to go to the web page when you're on the YouTube talk. For each of the web pages, it really gives inspiration to go and listen to these videos and deeper understanding and understanding from the heart. Okay, the dynamics of the personality. Okay, there's a little 2 dots on the second O of new dynamics, which I didn't know how to create on my keyboard. But all of those NOOs, there's a little 2 dots on the second O. And each time you see the NOO, it refers to spiritual. So spiritual dynamics rather than psychodynamics. So Freud was all about psychodynamics, different aspects of the personality interacting. Frankl is about the spiritual. Since we have genuine free will and are meaning orientated, the dynamics of the personality are based on 3 things. 1, freedom of the will. We truly do have free will, and saying that we don't is not authentic. It's a pretense. Of course, outcomes and situations are limited, but we have the choice to act or not and what we are going to do. So number 1, freedom of the will. Number 2, the will to meaning. It's really meaning that satisfies us and nothing else does. Okay? People who have meaning survive. People who do not have meaning do not survive in difficult circumstances. And when you have everything and you have no meaning, you have NUI, okay? Spiritual depression and neurosis. So this is very different to Maslow. Maslow, remember, said, okay, once you've got your basic needs met, you move on to the next in the hierarchy until you reach the pinnacle, which is self-actualization. Here, Frankl says, it doesn't matter where you are in this world, absolutely starving to death or perfectly satisfied, you must have meaning. And he lived and tested this out in the camps. So there's this evidence from experience. Okay. Meaning is more important than happiness. Happiness without meaning is empty. Okay. Setting personal growth as a purpose is empty. That's why so many self-help books, they look so exciting, they're so disappointing when you're actually reading them. They're so boring because they are empty. They have no ultimate purpose. Okay. So when people don't have a meaningful life, they turn to the will to pleasure and the will to power. These are signs of existential emptiness. They are false substitutes. They are not real. They are symptoms of a frustrated will to meaning, and they are a little like addictions. We have to reach outside ourselves to be fully alive and engaged with life. Okay, third principle. Third basic assumption. Okay, the meaning of life. Okay, so I think three is okay. Basically, here are three ways you can find meaning in your life, but I don't think it's comprehensive. Creative, you can create something new or beautiful, okay, in order to contribute. That is meaningful. Experiential, the appreciation of goodness, beauty, and truth in our world around us. Love, he would classify as an experiential value, because what is love? It is to be lost in the appreciation of someone else, okay, rather than in relating to someone else as an extension of yourself. You recognize the preciousness of another person. Okay. Attitudinal values. All people cannot avoid the suffering, death, and guilt that is built into human existence. It's very similar to Buddhism. It's very interesting, the connections of Buddhism. Okay. So to live is to suffer. To find meaning in life is to find meaning in the midst of suffering. We need to find within suffering is where you will find your meaning. You can't find it by escaping suffering or once you get rid of your suffering. You have to look for it inside the suffering by changing your attitudes. Okay. It is here that we encounter the central theme of existentialism. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. If there is a purpose in life at all, there must be a purpose in suffering and in dying. But no man can tell another what this purpose is. Each must find out for himself and must accept the responsibility that his answer prescribes. If he succeeds, he will continue to grow in spite of all indignities. Okay, so this is a quote by Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. This is actually a quote from Gordon Allport from the preface of Man's Search for Meaning. Okay, here is another quote, and this quote is about at one point while he was in the camps, Dr. Frankl focused on his wife, and he had no idea if she was alive or dead, and all he did was think about her and think about how beautiful she was and how much he loved her and how much she loved him, and just bask in that love. And he realized it was actually irrelevant whether she was alive or dead, that the love was still there and that nothing could destroy it. It was indestructible. Okay. So for him, love was the highest source of meaning. Okay. Right. The development of the personality. Okay, so because we're spiritual, we are born spiritual. So we've really got the core of ourselves is present. But through life, as we make choices, we grow and we change. So people can go from into the shadow of themselves and their lowest bestial subhuman nature, or they can transcend into sainthood and huge beauty and heroism. Okay. So he said, when you're a child, you tend to be pleasure seeking. When you're an adolescent, you tend to be power seeking, but these are stages of development. And adulthood is partially a process of outgrowing these goals and searching for meaning in our lives. There's definitely some truth to that, although not entirely. Okay, so you can see a person as a time gestalt, meaning that a person is an entity that comes into full existence over time. So if you look at photographs of someone young to old, you can see as they change, it gets written on their faces. Who have they become and how? And what choices have they made becomes written on their faces. You can read a person from the lines of their face and the look in their eyes. Okay. Optimal development. Okay, when we are acting on that spiritual level, we are in optimal development, and it's quite rare because people really, really, they really, really leap outside of themselves into that amazing transcendent realm. Okay, um, okay, like Mandela's and Mother Teresa's and Viktor Frankl's. Okay, but people who do reach this, or who are on that path, determine their own actions and choose how to behave. They're fairly objective and realistic. They can use humor. Okay, they are outward looking and dedicated to an external set of goals. They are future directed. Their work is a vocation. They appreciate goodness, truth, and beauty. They respect and appreciate others. They're not so wrapped up in themselves they can't see anyone else as real. And they can find meaning in the midst of suffering. Okay, psychopathology. There are two important ideas brought to psychopathology from logotherapy. One, the Pneugenic Neurosis. Okay, so people suffering comes from a lack of connection to their meaning. They haven't discovered the meaning in life yet. They have not been brave enough to respond to life and to take on real responsibility. So when they don't put meaning first, they become empty, depressed, neurotic, even to the point of committing suicide. Okay, which is a modern epidemic and which Dr. Frankl worked with specifically before the Holocaust in Vienna, and striving for empty pleasures and empty power. When the whole society lacks meaning, a collective neurosis arises. Okay, so this is partially understanding the huge potential for evil. And because he was around for the Holocaust, this created a huge question for existentialists, philosophers, psychologists, everyone who was really engaging with what is going on here was challenged by this terrible experience and looked deeply into the darkness of the human soul. So it's a lot deeper than these four little points. Okay, collective neurosis, unplanned day-to-day existence, no aims, no purpose, fatalism, feeling helpless and victimized, conformism, handing over your autonomy to somebody else to tell you what to do, what to think, what is right, what is wrong, totalitarianism. People are told what to do, what to believe, and how to act. They blindly follow and get told what to do, and that leads to horror. Okay. So conformism, people just trying to mimic everyone, not striving to be authentic, just striving to be according to an exterior set of values and norms. Okay. On the website, you can click, it's embedded in here. It's deeply touching and horrific and speaks very directly to this concept. This is a Pink Floyd music from the wall. Okay. Again, on the website, this is embedded. It's amazing. It's worth listening to. Sean Stevenson spoke inside a prison, speeches to prisoners. Okay, here the point is that psychiatric patients also have human dignity, but actually it's much broader, that all humans have human dignity because all humans have a spirit. They're not just machines. So the nucleus of man remains indestructible, restoring dignity to anyone who is often robbed of dignity. Okay. All right. Here's a little quiz. You can go to the link there and see how much purpose your life has. Okay, so this is about applications. Logotherapy is meaning-based. It calls on people to step outside themselves, serve a greater good, and create meaning, or discover meaning rather than create meaning, because it's not really something you create, it's objectively real. Okay. So logotherapy uses certain tools to help people. Number one, Socratic dialogue. So it's like, it's helping you to unpack your own concepts by asking you questions in an open way and pointing nuances and possible interpretations and ways of unpacking those concepts to you so you can help to understand yourself. Okay, so he would say, why don't you commit suicide? What is it that's keeping you alive? That's quite a challenging question, but it does help people to get to grips with it. Okay, humor. Okay, classic. This is the Harry Potter. Okay. And of course, if you have had difficult times, you will have noticed already that humor can really help deal with that and put it into a kind of a manageable proportion. When you laugh at it, you can manage it. Okay. All right. Paradoxical intention. This is directly connected to humor. Paradox, meaning what you intend and what the outcome is, are opposites. So if you, like, you know, when you're trying your best not to make the same mistake, the harder you try, the more likely you are to make that mistake. Okay. So what you do is you turn it around. You say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that mistake on purpose, or I'm going to do what terrifies me on purpose. Okay. So this helps you in three ways. Number one, when you actually try to do it on purpose, it's quite hard to do it. Okay. Number two, when you succeed in doing it on purpose, you go, oh, I was in control. And I won. I succeeded in doing that, and the world didn't end. So it takes away the charge of that fear or that negative emotion. And three, it's absurd, and therefore it's amusing, and it helps bring you to that humor. Okay. De-reflection. De-reflection is deliberately not paying attention to a problem. So remember, you've also got hyper-intention is when you try so hard, you're trying too hard. It has the opposite effect. So paradoxical, you turn it around and you try to make something happen. I'm explaining this badly. Hyper-intention. You've got the intention of not stuffing it up. So you try your hardest not to stuff it up, and then of course you stuff it up. Paradoxical intention. You try to stuff it up, and then either you don't stuff it up or you succeed in stuffing it up and you realize it wasn't so bad. Hyper-reflection. When you think about something, problem so hard, you get fixated on it and you can't free yourself from it, and it doesn't get any better. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Okay. De-reflection, you say, okay, I'm not going to think about it. So you don't pay attention to it. Like an itch or like pain, removing your attention diminishes the pain. Focusing on the pain makes it worse. Okay. So these are just techniques that you can use to trick your mind. But what they do, what this way of managing your mind does for you, is it gives you spiritual abilities, the ability to detach yourself from your problems and also from your self-image, because your self-image is half the time what kills you anyway. Self-transcendence, focusing on something beyond yourself. You are not the most important thing in your own life. What's important in your life is something greater than yourself. This gives you an existential reorientation, which is so essential for survival and for optimal spiritual existence. Okay, and of course this has to come from within. It's no good other people telling you to grin and bear it. You know, that's not in any way helpful. Okay. All right. Education. Education is about encouraging people to find meaning and to take responsibility. And this is true. Without that, education is meaningless. As a student, without creating your own, discovering your own meaning, choosing your meaning, okay, and taking responsibility for making that manifest, your studies are meaningless. All right. And if you just give people what they want, they have an empty existence, all right? Arbitrary, aimless, purposeless. Okay, this is a 10-minute. I recommend listening to it. It's amazing and it's true. Okay, you can hear I really love Viktor Frankl. Okay, aggression. So, unlike Carl Rogers and Maslow, Viktor Frankl really experienced some of the darkest aspects of humanity. And he observed that whether someone did good or evil was not dependent on whether they were a prisoner or a god. It was dependent on what they chose. So there were prisoners who were horrific, and there were guards who were kind. And of course, there were guards who were deeply sadistic, and prisoners who were kind. Okay. So it was about choice, and within each person, there was the potential for good and for evil. And they themselves made the choice over and over and over again, from moment to moment, as to which they would be. Okay. And of course, we are also shaped by our environments. Okay, this is quasi nihilism. You can listen to it, it's very disturbing. And of course, we know it, we all know it well, deeply, intimately, as South Africans. Okay, so we still have the freedom and ability to overcome our aggression and to change our environment. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way. Okay, there's a little test you can do. It just helps get some of the terminology into your head. And there is a last inspirational video, because I think the last 2 or 3 are pretty grim. So this is just to balance that out and lift you up again. Okay, it's quite moving. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it helped.